to kind of trickle in, but also get rolling as we move along. So welcome, everybody. I'll be your host today. I'm excited about that. It's a gorgeous spring April day, and we really appreciate you guys taking some time on the screen or here in person. I want you to know our numbers are increasing, so if you feel enticed, we'll have some snacks next time. So it's great to see faces we haven't seen for a little while and folks that we always get to see on our Thursday meetings every month. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and share our agenda. Let's see if we can grab that. Oh, that's who's just right there. There we go. Perfect. All right, can everybody see that okay?
Can you make it bigger?
I will.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I had to cut and paste, so we will make do. As Adriana sent out, our website is a little down and out for right now. So it'll be back online soon. And but here is the agenda that is posted on our website and what Adriana was able to share with us via email. So today Adriana and I are going to give a presentation, which I think is very well put. It's strategies for complex public engagement processes. And so we would want to run you through essentially a case study and then share with you some of the advances we've made and some of the different projects that I refer to as the community collaborative efforts that are going on throughout the county. And we're just going to highlight kind of two examples in the West County mostly. And be able to share some of the things that are going on. We got some online and maybe that, okay. Adriana's sabotaging us. All right, here we go. So any case, but before that, why don't we go ahead and do a round robin sharing of your current activities. I got Eric Shoes on as our first candidate.
Ooh, on the hot seat here.
Yeah, right.
All right. Well, nice to see everyone. Let's see. It's been busy times. Last week just did a bilingual training on ecologically informed defensible space with North Bay Jobs with Justice, which is great. Tying into most of the content is completely finished for the guide, and now we're working on getting it into the web designer. So just had a meeting with her leading up to this and looking forward to starting to get that out there. So looking for opportunities for workshops, site visits. We have some funding through the Resilient Landscapes Coalition, through the Venture Management Grant Program. So if there's any interest with any of those things, please reach out. Love to chat with Kim and Adriana about how we can coordinate those things. Haven't really checked in with Kim since he's back from vacation. I hope it was fun. And generally just looking forward to getting out in the field this summer, a lot more interaction with people, and hopefully I'll see some of your smiling faces out there.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Eric. It's good to see you again. I got Joe Butler coming up next.
Good morning, Joe Butler representing the Wallowa River Watershed Council. I'll let the RCD folks fill you in on the status of the management plan. Excuse me. The other project I wanted to mention is that we're also working on a technical advisory committee with Redwood Coast Land Conservancy. Has a good sized grant for a study of the Wallowa River estuary, and kind of the relevant thing for us that will come out of that project is recommendations on how to proceed with fisheries restoration projects in the watershed. So and Water Quality is working on updating total maximum daily load standards. So there's some kind of big picture things going on in the waters. That's it for me. Kim, I think you're muted.
Thank you, Jill, for those comments. I appreciate that. And Arthur, could you report out, please? Now you're muted, Arthur, I think.
Thanks, Kim. Not a whole lot to report out. If anybody doesn't know me, I'm work as a historical ecologist at Baseline Consulting and did a bunch of work for CAL FIRE over the last few years. And right now I'm taking some of that data and working with Jim Thorne from UC Davis, working up a paper, and also maybe doing something similar with Lisa McKaylee on some other aspects of that work. And I don't know if anybody is here from Regional Parks or Sonoma Ecology Center, but I just want to say I was happy to see the burn piles up in the regional park, and the place actually looks tended as opposed to overgrown. So thanks for the good work there, you guys, if you're here. And that's all.
All right, thank you, Arthur.
We do like one in the room and one on Zoom.
Oh, that's a good idea. We'll go ahead and take one here in the room, and let's have Wendy Schmidt, please.
Okay, Wendy Schmidt. I am on the board of the local CMPS Milo Baker chapter, and lately been working on the tree ordinances with Robert. Thank you, Robert, for all your hard work. Yeah, our chapter is very, very active.
That's
So
great.
I'm happy to be back here.
Yeah.
I haven't participated in this group for a long time.
It's really nice to see you again. Thanks for coming back. Yeah, see, folks always come back to the working group. I think that's the bottom line, right? Brooke, you're next.
Hey all, good to see everyone. I was hoping to be there in person, but I came down with a cold, so I'm here in beautiful Stockoff Creek at Stillwater Cove. Actually, I'm at home, but thank you, Arthur, for noticing the work that we've done over at Sonoma Valley Regional Parks. Yeah, we feel like we're getting that one in shape, and we're moving that one closer to doing some prescribed burn, quite possibly in this fall coming up. Some of the other projects we have going on, Monoreal Redwoods, we put in 27 acres of shaded fuel break. We've been burning off piles there to get rid of some of that material, and we're moving closer to doing a broadcast burn, about 30 acres in partnership with CAL FIRE and Marshall Tuberville out there. So that project is going forward. It's great to see us be able to start to work on that forest. It's a redwood forest, lots of tan oak death, things of that nature. But thinning that out, opening it up, and trying to get that forest stand back on track. Along with that, we are kind of doing the fuels to flows idea or concept that Brock Dolman is the ambassador on, where we're taking some of that material like Doug fir needles and branches, folding that into some of the ephemeral drainages to capture sediment and kind of build up the bed and bank of those systems and kind of try to rehydrate and hold that water up in that upper watershed of Monoreal Redwoods. So that's great to see that pilot project moving forward. The other thing that we're working on is we're trying to develop a framework for a tribal fellowship that would train up tribal members on fuel reduction work, prescribed fire work. So the fellowship would consist of training components. Trainings would consist of, taking some trainings from ACR, getting folks Firefighter 2 certified. But then the other component to the fellowship would be then going out on regional parks and other tribal lands to actually do that work. So have that hands-on experience as well. So we're developing that. And the more and more I reach out to other folks, I realize that other folks are working on the same concepts, same ideas. So please reach out to me if you guys are working on any of that. All ideas are welcome. And this is kind of like our brainstorming process right now before we put the final proposal together. And so those are a few of the big projects we're working on at regional parks.
That's really exciting. Do you know much about the Tulare burns that are programmed for the spring, I think?
Tulare?
Tulane.
Oh, Tulare.
Yes.
Yeah, we are planning to move forward with burning Tulare. I believe the next burn unit there would be south of the burn that we did last spring, summer. So it'd just be a continuation moving south on that grassland ridge on the western side of Tulare Ranch.
Fantastic. That's great. Great stuff. Thanks, Brooke. Patty, why don't you go next?
Thanks. Hi, Patty Aaron. I am the new community engagement specialist with the Sonoma Resource Conservation District. And I'm working for Jason Wells. And and I'm really new, so all I know is what Jill mentioned. We're working on the Gualala management plan. That's gonna be out by the end of the month. And we're gonna ask for comments back by the middle of May.
All right, fantastic. Good.
Thanks.
Patty, do you want to share a little bit about who you are and your background and what brought you to your position?
Sure. I'm from Santa Rosa. I was raised in Rankin Valley. I moved away and was gone for almost 25 years. I spent most of that time working for the Bureau of Reclamation in headquarters in Washington, DC, and then in the Southwest outside of Las Vegas. One of the most fun things that I ever got to do was I did 5 years of being the media contact for Hoover Dam.
Oh, wow.
So that was great. I left the Bureau of Reclamation in 2022 and last year moved back to Sonoma County and decided to come home, and it's really good to be home.
That's fantastic. Great. Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. All right. So why don't we go to Robert Aguero, please?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Robert Aguero, Permit Sonoma. As Wendy said, the tree ordinance has been approved by the Board of Supervisors on a 4-1 vote on Tuesday, and then they also unanimously approved a new oak woodland ordinance, which would establish an oak woodland combining zone, as well as new rules that would apply to the conversion of oak woodland. So that would set up a discretionary permitting process for any activity that proposes to convert more than half an acre of oak woodland with certain findings that need to be made. But more, I think, impressive is that it takes the regulatory and sort of like mitigation approach of the wetland framework and applies it to terrestrial ecosystems. So there's really a categorization system where an applicant would be required to submit a report that identifies really the quality of the oak woodland using certain criteria in the ordinance, and then mitigate appropriately. So that way, higher quality oak woodlands like old growth blue oak stands, maybe valley oak stands, would have a higher mitigation ratio than a more stunted stand or a more impacted stand potentially. So that's going to be a new framework. It's really a novel concept. In the state, it's probably the most progressive and like ecologically based ordinance in the state right now. And we're very excited that is in effect. That'll go into effect 30 days from this past Tuesday. And then the tree ordinance will go back to the board, hopefully April 30th, just for a second reading, because it adopts changes to the subdivision code, which requires 2 readings. But that'll be on their consent agenda and should be not controversial at all at this point. And then updates to the tree ordinance included expanding the list of protected species from 11 to about 31 native tree species, expanding the applicability of the ordinance to more than just what is currently discretionary development projects. And then also reducing the applicable diameter from 9 inches down to 6 inches diameter. And then the fees were also updated using basic inflation. So what was once a $200 fee is now a $500 fee, and then it escalates up from there depending on the size of the tree. So that's very exciting news. So there's a lot of work to do now in developing implementation guidance, having trainings for the public and staff on what this means. But we're very excited that this has happened, and it'll be really good, I think, for Sonoma County forests. And I would also say it is new rules, but I would also say that these are very landowner friendly ordinances. There's a lot of carve outs in there for property management, land management, vegetation management that really, I think, echoes the ethos of what Sonoma County is trying to do with their forests.
That's fantastic, Robert. Congratulations on getting that across the finish line. That is huge. That was a sure huge amount of effort to get that thing. Continue to get feedback, get the public involved, and then getting the board involved as well. So we really appreciate all the work that you've been doing on that. Robert, do you want to do a quick update on where we are with the VTP approvals? I think that's pretty exciting news.
For the FEMA grants?
Yes.
Yeah, so that I believe is going to the board for their approval. I want to say mid-May at this point is where we're at with it. And so that will be a sort of like singular large environmental review document that provides CEQA coverage for the 4 FEMA grants that Permit Sonoma is running. So Wildfire Adapted 1 and 2, Hazardous Fuels grant, and the BRIC grant as well. So that covers a lot of area and a very programmatic CEQA review that will be able to be used in the future as well, not just for the initial funding from these FEMA grants.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's another huge milestone. So thanks for your leadership on that as well.
And I will just to give a shout out to the staff. That is Courtney Gutman and Aldo Lopez that are taking the lead on that one. So they deserve all the credit.
All right. Good enough. Let's go to Rose. You want to report out?
Yeah, I'm Rose. I'm a Grizzly Corps fellow at Goldridge RCD. I think you'll be hearing a lot more about the NIFWIC workshops today, but we're starting to plan one for June 9th for the Lower Russian River community. We'll get more details on that later. And I'm also coordinating the Forest Working Group calendar. So if you have events that you want to be added to that, you can email me. And if you have ideas for presentations and guest speakers, working on Adriana with that as well. And lastly, I think I talk about this every time, but working on the Safer West County Defensible Space Project. So that's for Monterey, Camp Meeker, Occidental, and Forestville. We have $1,000 rebates available and free shipping available for those communities. You can find out more on saferwestcounty.org.
Fantastic. I love it. Good deal. All right, let's go to the screen. We've got Judy Rosales is up next.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to have to leave here in about 5 minutes. So I'm going to make this quick and I will come back. We're starting our archaeology surveys today. We're finally getting started on our CAL FIRE grant. The rains have just made it impossible. We had our contractor selected in November and he's going to start work on Monday. But we have 8 different sites. And so working with the archaeologists, and they have a team of 3 people out here, is bigger than we expected, more expensive than we expected. Matt Green can do archaeology under CAL FIRE, but he can't do it under the Cal VTP. And when we wrote the grant in 2021, we did not know that. And so we put some budget in for the VTP, but not enough. And so we're working on pulling all of that together. But we're excited about getting that done. We are putting in an adaptive planning grant, facilitated by the governor's office, which is much bigger than any of us expected. I did apply for technical assistance, and so I have a weekly meeting with them. And they've been fabulous. They're helping us put the budget together, the work plan together, every item in the grant application itself, which has really been helpful and will be helpful as we go along in any of our grant writing. I work with a woman who's actually in New York. So I meet with them weekly. That's pretty good. And then I'm going to cut this short. We do have our Managing Invasive Species workshop this weekend up at the Jenner Headlands. It's going to be a beautiful day for it. We're looking forward to it. We're looking forward to working with Jason Mills. We've had several meetings and discussions with him, and I think it's going to be very, very informative. And so that's about it for now. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Judy. And we'll go to Amanda.
Hi, everyone. Amanda Benton. I also do community outreach primarily for the FEMA grants with Sonoma County, or with Sonoma. Carol Leone is also on this call, so I will let her discuss the SoCo Adapts and the more programmatic updates there. But hazardous fuels, we are still in the process of narrowing down projects to be implemented, but making good progress there. We have a short list of things that we're going to start with, and also, weather conditions apply to us as well. So we are hoping to get the contractor out there to start doing botanical surveys by the end of the month on a couple projects. Still waiting on some landowners to say yes. So might still be making phone calls to get permission for access, but there are things going forward and actual implementation activities, which is really exciting, as you all know.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great. Good. Welcome. All right. Next we have, how about Carleone, please?
Hi, everybody. Permit Sonoma's kind of taking up all the space in the room today, huh? There are a lot of us and we're really busy and we're doing some awesome stuff. So I'm really grateful to have such an awesome team to work with over there. I'm on the fire prevention side, so I work primarily in the space of near home and defensible space, where we have multiple grants that we're moving into ending up phase 1, which is assessments and stuff, to start working on our contracting piece. Anybody who's working on trainings for landscape folks and or construction folks, I'd be very interested in having a chit chat with you, because we're just looking at starting to put together some training so that we can have that in our pocket when we start to actually get start getting contractors on board, which will be probably when phase 2 starts, which is maybe a year, maybe more. But that's something that would really like to work with existing programs to get going. So that's most of my updates. Any questions? You know where to find me.
A shout out. I read the CWPP. The whole thing from cover to cover.
My work here is done. I'm a happy person now. You are in a very small but elite gang.
And then I saw the author's name. So props to you for getting it done, man. It's just amazing.
Thank you, Fred. That means a lot. It was quite a heavy lift, given that that was a side project on top of implementing other grants at the same time.
And can I tell everybody it's 168 pages? Or is it 268 pages?
Oh God, it was 290 or something. So the fact that it's 100 is because Roberta and I sat down and did it was a lot of work getting that thing getting it to the end. I would love to chit chat to you about it, because I still think a lot of changes need to be made, especially getting it from 160 pages to much smaller. So I'd love to talk to you about that sometime, Fred. And in regards to that, the one piece of the CWPP, which is super important and is still bothers me, because it's the part that we had a really hard time getting done, which is arriving on how do we prioritize projects across the county. There's a lot of new ideas about how to do that, some new groups showing up about how to do that. But right now, if you have projects that are either in the idea stage or in the implementation stage or complete, we would love it if you could go to the CWPP hub site, which if you just Google it, it'll take you right there, and draw those projects into that list. Ultimately, what we really need is who's doing what where, so that we can use that to sort of move it on. I'm hoping we're just staffing up for our grants now, and I'm hoping that will free up some time to get folks to help to work on pushing that out, revising the project entry portal a little bit. Right now, it's sort of like, do you have an idea or do you have a big project? on the recommendation of Marshall Turbeville, he also wanted to use it to create sort of a heat map where all you have to be is a property owner who wants something done.
Yeah.
And we know that's not fundable, but it will start to give us a heat map of, oh, look, there's 10 projects, 10 people pinging in this area. Wonder if they've ever talked. And so that's the change we're going to be making to the PAP as soon as somebody has time to make that happen. But thanks for bringing that up, Fred.
Yeah. And we're not receiving any more comments on the CWPP, just so you know.
Oh, no, see, we're going meta now.
Yeah. Carleon and the Vegetation Management Grant Program worked carefully together as of last year so that all projects that are applying for our grant program had to go through and enter their projects into the CWPP. So that was helpful to be able to like test the tool and then make sure that people see how simple it is to get it into the CWPP. So kudos to you on all that work, Carly. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And so let's go to Fred now.
I hope everybody else is going through.
We are at the end.
Late, but I'm dealing with the county today.
All
And let's see. I did a meeting with the Bohemian Collaborative, and that was, that was super interesting. Amy Bellhartz has brought together a bunch of people. We did a meeting in Green Valley Farm. We did not have any agencies, and I read up the CWPP and the CAL FIRE protocols and the pods, and of course Adriana was there, keeping me in line. And you know, we kind of came up with this concept of, if I can restate it, a club sandwich, where you have all these different regulatory concerns and hurdles, and they all have to get put together, and your project is a toothpick, and it cuts through all of them. And we used the example of, you can't get between the two fire stations in Occidental, which is less than a mile apart. Half a mile, because it's overgrown with vegetation.
Wow.
It's the most dangerous piece of the road. And we're thinking something like that creates a heat map hotspot. Club sandwich.
Nice. I like
Can I have
it.
that club sandwich heated? Other than that, gosh, just a lot of work on species, taught at the JC, and shout out to Brooke for bringing the JC together so that it can be a force of action again.
Great. Good. All right, next comes Adriana.
Okay, so yeah, I wanted to say, Rose and I tried out the CWPP project entry tool months ago, but I wanted to just tell everyone it was really easy. It's very fast. So thanks, Caroline, for making it so easy to enter that kind of information in. What else? Kind of just a report for on behalf of the RCDs. We're still working with landowners to help them apply for EQIP or other NRCS programs. We have kind of like a special partnership program between NRCS and the RCD called RCPP, the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. I always stumble over that one. But so that's just like a separate pot of money that's for landowners who want to do fire resiliency work in forests and grasslands. So just know that pot of money is there for you guys. We are, I guess some other stuff that Kim and I, you know, that's not what Kim and I are talking about later is that continuing to work with Tamara on her woody feedstock pilot project, the assessment of like what to do with all of the excess biomass that's coming out of our forests and keeping it from being a hazard and making it more of a resource. So that project is ongoing, and she is setting up like stakeholder engagement meetings. I encourage you all to attend to learn more about it, or you can participate in the project itself by joining the steering committee or whatever it's called. I can't remember, but it's
The
kind of
upcoming Upland biomass training.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Can you say something about that?
It's the second and third,
Yes.
I think.
That's
And
a
it's at Upland, and Tamara knows everything. And check LinkedIn. She has some posts about that. And then on the 3rd and 4th, there is the Forest Landowners of California meeting in Mead, at which Matt Green is speaking, and they'll be talking about a bunch of things for interested in. I will go, so you don't have to.
When is that?
that would be the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, or Friday, Saturday, of that weekend. Third and fourth.
Oh, third and fourth, okay, all right, got it, great. All right, we'll try to send you some links over the course of the meeting today. So that's great. Is there anything else you wanted to share?
No.
All right, great. So I'll just report out and then jump into our presentation. But we received 22 applications for the Vegetation Management Grant Program this year. There was only $1 million in the pot, so we expected to have less people apply, but we still had 22 projects to review. Our evaluation committee consists of myself, Monica Del Martini, Patty Brown from Regional Parks, Molly Ocean from Sonoma Water, Ben Nichols, and Robert Aguero. So we met last Monday to review or to compile our different scorecards and talk about what we were seeing, what some of the projects we really wanted to see move forward. And we're in the final throes of our recommendation to the board. So the next step will be for me to present that to the board. And hopefully May 21st is our date to finalize that. And then with their approval, we'll enter into grant agreements with the projects we selected. And I can report more out once I get board approval on those projects, okay? So with that, I think I'd like to transition to our feature presentation today. Let's go ahead and go to our presentation, and I'll share our screen. Are we still good? Did you make any other edits, Adriana?
I think we're good.
Okay, great. All right, so how do I go full screen on this one? Yes, thanks.
Yeah.
Right, does that work? All right, so I'm gonna minimize this for us. All right, can everyone see that okay? I'm not hearing one, so I'll say yes. All right, so again, for those who haven't met me, I'm Kim Batchelder, and I work as the Vegetation Management Coordinator for Ag and Open Space. Oh, that's great, thank you, appreciate that. And so what Adriana and I wanted to do is describe a couple of projects we've been working on and how they really help us to think about the landscape community collaboration of various landowners who have a lot of different objectives for their particular land, but then working together to make these communities more wildfire resilient on a landscape scale. So we wanted to share some examples, including the Gernwood and Rio Negro shaded fuel break, which we gave a presentation to all the landowners earlier this month, and use that as the basis of our presentation today. So in a nutshell, just to introduce our project team and the community organizations, go through the project background and design, where do we come up with funding options and a timeline, and then what are CAL FIRE's priorities and regional context. And then finally, we'll transition to the stewardship planning and multi-landowner collaboration that the RCD is doing, again, in another area that shows a lot of potential, specifically the Bohemian Collaborative, as well as in the west part of the county, or sorry, east part of the county along the Mayacamas in the Mark West area, where they're doing many multi-landowner collaboration and a stewardship plan for that property as well, those properties as well. So with that, I'd like to continue on. The basis of a lot of this work started in 2021, where we had just experienced the Walbridge fire. The funding from PG&E was officially endorsed and received from the county which set aside $25 million to do vegetation management. And so one of the specific things they asked us to do, asked the Ag and Open Space to manage, was to develop a grant program. And we received a couple of different grants applications in the West County that weren't at a certain level of environmental compliance. i.e. that they did not qualify because of the disconnect with their environmental compliance. And I'll go into a little bit more detail. But the project we want to focus on today was the Rio Negro shaded fuel breaks and what we're now calling the North Side Russian River shaded fuel break project. And so in 2021, we provided 2 grants. They were mostly for roadside treatments and projects that could fall under a notice of exemption. So they were within 30 feet of the road's edge. Specifically in 2021, we funded a circuit rider to do roadside treatments from West Side Road all the way to the top of Mount Jackson or close to Mount Jackson, as well as other different projects within that area. It was a youth crew that had a chipper, and they were basically doing 30 feet from the roadside. Then in 2022, a project that had been applied for in 2021, but did not meet CEQA compliance, was that of Hacienda Community Vegetation Project, which was primarily along the roads in the interior part and the lower basin of the community of Hacienda, trying to address fuels that would start from homeless activity in their particular community along the streams. There's a lot of vegetation buildup, so we provide funding for that as well. And so those are examples that were really roadside treatments that did not, and those typically don't last for very long. And one of the primary goals of the PG&E funding and the Vegetation Management Grant Program is to provide, as Supervisor Rabbit put it, generational change. So are we moving in that direction, a way in which we can think of landscapes and how things are changed? And so the next example I want to focus on is Friends of Rio Negro submitted an application that focused on what we call the how do we put it, the toilet bowl line of the basin. And so the idea was to think about treating the fuels right above the homes at the mid slope of a very steep basin with really big fuel loads. That was the original intent of the proposal. And you can see all the different little 1,000-acre or 1,000 square foot areas that were compiled as part of this project. And there, you know, it's a very expensive project, up around $872,000 for this type of treatment. It was suggesting that it was exempt, from which is, it has to be within 100 feet of a road at the maximum, and consider all these other things. They're going through riparian corridors, that you have a very densely populated area as far as housing goes. And so the project was rejected in the first round. And the supervisors really struggled over this one at the recommendations of the evaluation committee. And we said, well, there's no way we could meet the standard of an exemption for this particular project because of the fuel loads and many of the other environmental factors. But the supervisors wanted to conditionally support these projects as long as we can find the right environmental compliance for the type of work that they were doing. So the Ag and Open Space started working with CAL FIRE, specifically Ben Nichols and Marshall Tuberville, Permit Sonoma. We had Robert Aguero supporting us to support Friends of Rio Negro to refocus on the shaded fuel break, creating a shaded fuel break along the ridge line. So you can see in this map a pretty good detail of a yellow and kind of reddish corridor that goes all the way around the ridge line above the community of Rio Negro. And the purpose of this design was to think about large-scale wildfire that would approach this area, that if it did get into the basin, all those communities, all those homes would be lost. That was the threat that Wildbridge fire presented to us. And so we wanted to think about that scale and not the scale that the Hacienda group was looking at. What happens if a fire starts within the community and burns out? So they were looking at a different scope. And Friends of Rio Negro, very new to this arena, really was quite open to working with us. they served as the ability to reach out to landowners and really provide connection with the landowners and what this project was aiming to do. So then we talked about ways in which we can getting landowners engaged on the periphery of the project. Many of these landowners have no idea that Friends of Rio Nino existed, and our main man, David Rosen, was knocking on doors and rattling everyone's cage to figure out if they were going to be on board or not. So that type of like community leader is really what a lot of these projects depend on. He had no technical skills, and so when landowners started asking complicated questions, we were making sure that he wasn't our spokesperson, but we could actually provide the technical assistance behind him to be able to make this thing forward. So initial treatment would be a mechanical treatment using hand crews or a masticator. The maintenance would largely be using prescribed burning or prescribed grazing up on the ridge line. That was the original intent of the project. And so by contrast, I wanted to kind of highlight another project that's in the south side of the Russian River, where we started to look at and we started working in 2021 with Oddfellows, Summer Home, and what we call the Canyon communities, which is to the east of Summer Home and provides a lot of like ridge line type of access to some of these homes. Again, the population density is kind of high. And so we wanted to think about a strategy that would be able to address fires that might come, wildfires might come from the south, which isn't typically the trajectory of fires in our area, but still there's a lot of heavy fuels on the south side. So how could we create a barrier between that and the communities that lie along the river there? And so in this case, we designed this a well-articulated project that stretches from essentially the 116 on the west side all the way across the ridge lines over above the Oddfellows, which is the orange community, and Summer Home, which is the brown community, and then stretching across private lands to essentially the Russian River over by the winery on that side. I'm going to draw a blank on it. I guess it is Corbell, but Corbell's on the other side. There's another winery that touches space over there along the river. So nevertheless, this was the design. All right, it's like, all right, we got what we wanted. This is going to be a really interesting project. We really have to work with the landowners and explain conceptually what we're trying to do. We had good buy-in by CAL FIRE and Permit Sonoma was really working with us on the design of this. But we're going to be using a new tool. We're going to be using the vegetation treatment program, which is relatively new. The county had not had a lot of experience in applying this. This is a new grant program, so we had a steep learning curve as well. But we really wanted to test it here on South Side to see if it really worked. And we learned a lot. And so I wanted to highlight this vision. This is what actually got done in the original design was the red and black line going across the top of the ridge line all the way over to the eastern side of the property. And so what happened though is a principal landowner right in the middle. This is when Robert and I were going up there on the site visit to inspect the site and work with the consultant, which was Environmental Resource Solutions, to determine whether this is the appropriate site. Are the landowners, are there any modifications we want to make on the assignment? And so I was walking along, the gentleman who owned a significant part of the property, which is mostly in that red bordered parcels. And he came up alongside, like, Kim, I never submitted a grant application to you guys. What is this about a grant that's happening? It's like, oh my goodness, this is starting from square one. And so the landowner, we really worked with him and trying to provide him with some clear guidance about what we're trying to accomplish. Not only in that meeting, obviously, it was kind of like we're walking his property, learning about, all his kind of dirty laundry, so to speak, on his land use policies there. But beside that, we were trying to encourage him to, let's go ahead and go through the planning part. And if there's any time that you want to pull out, you can pull out. But let's get the property under the environmental surveys so we can at least have a VTP that goes across this whole landscape. And so we took him out to Jenner to see what Jenner looks like, 5 years after treatment on that property. We took him to, we had discussions with CAL FIRE and Mitch Hayden, who is the forester for Environmental Resource Solutions. And Mitch and I were sitting at their table talking to them and really trying to find out what their issues. The thing is, there's a lot of property there that had essentially been trespassed on by the local communities down in the basin. And so there was a real clash. And we would have known that if we would have had longer amounts of engagement with these communities. And the good lesson learned is that you have to engage landowners early and often. You have to understand their issues. Because if we would have known their issues, we could have created a degree of protection. We could have established gates in which they would feel more confident that mountain bikers weren't coming through and trespassing on land. They had situations where people came up and were hunting on their land, and and sheep of theirs were injured during different things. So these are real life issues, but I think it was really helpful for us to understand. In the end of the day, the project got completed. We had to go do a work around their property. But if these are kind of the key lessons learned. Start the landowner outreach and engagement early. Make sure that they're aware of what we're trying to accomplish and what that this funding is available to be able to help us do this project. Visualize the desired conditions of the treatment. So what did we want to show? What do we want to accomplish on the ground? And what kind of impact it's going to have? A lot of people, that's one of the reasons we took a landowner out to Jenner, because it's oftentimes hard for landowners to, you're gonna do what on this property? How is that gonna help me or hurt me? Or, who's gonna be responsible for maintenance afterwards? All these issues are things you can talk through and determine what's a good way to go about this. Economics, the treatment costs, these are some of the things that, thank goodness we have Jenner Headlands to be able to show us what a treatment looks like and what were some of the things they tried. They used chippers, they've done prescribed burning, they've used manual crews, they've used a masticator. So they've done the research for us on how much it costs per acre. And that's a pretty similar landscape and forest type to compare to south side and north side. So we were starting to build a good foundation of experience in the county, and the purpose of the grants that are going to south side and then also the north side projects are based on these opportunities to learn from each other and to have greater interaction between different communities who are faced with similar circumstances, similar dynamics, but don't know what the solution, where do they start? And I think that's one of the things that really kind of provoked us to consider how we can create a series of workshops that can work these landowners and help these landowners figure out how to do this type of work on a landscape scale in a way that works together. So I just wanted to highlight some of the pre-treatment and post-treatment photos. We had a road corridor that they were trying to focus on. They did 100 feet from either side of the road under the VTP, and that treatment was completed last fall. And this ultimately is what our next game plan is. And so we did spend a little bit of time with the Southside River, Russian River Shaded Fuel Break. This is what we're referring to as a North Side Shaded Fuel Break. And we submitted a grant to CAL FIRE Wildfire Protection or Prevention Program. And I hope to hear from them soon so we can activate these projects right here. So on the left-hand side of the screen in purple is the Gernwood Park Shaded Fuel Break project. In the middle is the Rio Nido Shaded Fuel Break. And then finally the Hacienda Shaded Fuel Break, which we're calling the Mount Jackson Resort Road Shaded Fuel Break. And so by contrast, in 2021, where we just want to get projects on the ground and get crews working and helping to do some roadside treatments, the shaded fuel break will look at more of a 100-foot distance from either side of the road where the landscape can accommodate that and have professional crews. And this was no strike against Circuit Rider, but the youth crews had some issues of just accomplishing 30 feet from the road. Maybe the diameter of the trees were too large for them to handle safely. Maybe it was access and pulling up a chipper up steep roads and the familiarity with vehicles and heavy equipment and things like that. So I absolutely love to support Circuit Rider, but we also have to have that fine line between where do we engage with the professional crew who has the insurance and the liability all covered, so the landowners aren't assuming any of that liability as well. That's been some of the issues that have come up with some of the properties. But again, you'll notice on in the orange or reddish shape files of the Rio Nito shaded fuel brake, we have a big gap. I hate gaps. That's not how shaded fuel brakes are supposed to be designed. But again, we had landowners who had specific ideas in mind. They thought they could do it on their own. If that's true, that's great. But here is money that's being provided by either CAL FIRE or the Vegetation Management Grant Program to do this work for you. This is a great heads up. We can move something forward in order to protect these communities down below. And granted, this is an altruistic thing to do. You are sacrificing treatments on your land for the greater good. And that's some of the types of things that we have to work on as far as how do we present this as a win-win for all of us. And especially in an area that was so impacted by the Wallbridge fire, it's knocking on their door. So how do we do these steps in order to help us protect these lands? So I just have a couple other slides. This is kind of our timeline for implementing the shaded fuel brakes on the north side of the Russian River corridor. Sorry, we'll repeat, but again, post-treatment and pre-treatment. And then I kind of I threw this slide in here because this was really kind of the context of CAL FIRE of all the different shaded fuel brakes they have in mind. We have some implementation already going on the south side of the Russian River. There's other projects that are working on private lands around Monterey. Obviously, Brook and Regional Parks are working on the Redwood Regional Park there. But there are other options and opportunities to work together on all these different fuel brakes. These are kind of the desired footprints of shaded fuel brakes that CAL FIRE wants to try to support. So from a regional context, we're pretty close to being on task. And so I wanted to kind of transition this to, are you ready to take this slide? What do you think about, I think what I wanted to emphasize, like we had some great lessons learned from Southside. We're applying those lessons learned to the north side shaded fuel brake projects. And now we're starting to work on trying to provide excellent opportunities for landowners to engage with the professionals, such as Gold Ridge and Sonoma RCDs, the Ag and Open Space staff, CAL FIRE staff, Permit Sonoma, so that we have a cadre of people who can speak in a way that's technically rich for landowners to really engage what's going on these different projects.
To that exactly.
Yeah.
Is that CAL FIRE map available?
I believe so. It's a public document, so we can provide that for you.
Let's send it out.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. And so the workshops, kind of what we started working on is the Resilient Forests and Watersheds workshop series. Started with a National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant back in 2022. Adriana and I crafted this proposal that was finally funded in last spring of 2023. And so ideally, we wanted to launch with the conference that we had in June and be able to get the energy going, that we had this great event where everybody came to a central location and we were able to work with 120 participants in that event. Brought in some great technical resources, had some excellent presentations that were field-based, some were classroom, and it was really a successful event. Many of you were there. Then what we wanted to do is take this concept and move it to local workshops where we are basically taking the show on the road and being able to work with landowners in specific high-risk area. So think about the Bohemian corridor, you think about Upper Mark West, the Russian River corridor. So we have a lot of these areas where we're starting to create these workshops and trying to bring people into the same room so that we have an opportunity to engage early, so that we understand what they're interested in doing and vice versa. We get to be able to think about the large landscape and how to be able to do this correctly. So with that, do you want to lead on now?
I mean, I can just finish out the
Yeah,
presentation.
that sounds
Sure.
great.
Yeah, so just like Kim said, we're doing a series of workshops and we have a tentative upcoming workshop in June for the North Side Russian River Shaded Field Break landowners to get together and not just like refresh on what the project is that they're embarking on, but also thinking about what forest management projects can they do beyond the shaded field break. The shaded field break is just kind of like one starting point for them to be able to do more on their properties. And a lot of people have said they want to know what they can do to make their property more fire safe, and they want support doing it. They want money, they want help, they want guidance. So this workshop is kind of like a kickoff saying, hey, meet the cadre of people who are here to help you, all the technical assistants, and let's talk about what some kind of projects you might want to do. So we're going to be talking about shaded field breaks, forest management and technical assistance and financial assistance, how those wildfire prevention projects lead to a healthier Russian River watershed. That's kind of the goal of our, the funding that we have from NIFWIP is really focused on upland management for watershed health and safety. And then we hope to actually take a field trip to go and see some examples. I think we might go into Armstrong Woods to see some work that Parks has done there. Next slide. And then, updated. There's a, sorry, that one got updated. But anyway. Yeah, we're busy people. But basically our community engagement efforts, this is a photo of a meeting that we had in February at the Guerneville School for one of those shaded field break communities. And anyway, we had a really good turnout of people who were interested in showing up. I mean, this is significant because if you remember the Rio Nido community, the Hacienda community is the community that came to Kim and said, we want to do something, but they're at the bottom of the basin. We had to reach out, and Marshall did a lot to reach out to landowners who are on the ridge top and say, hey, actually you guys are our target because we want to do a ridge line project to protect both the people on the ridge and the people at the bottom in Hacienda. So these people this wasn't their idea, but they came to meet with us to learn about what we wanted to suggest that they do with us. So they listened to the project, they really trusted Marshall because Marshall had defended their homes. I mean, CAL FIRE defended their homes in the Walbridge fire. So they understood the importance of the project and they trusted us to really be helpers instead of just making life complicated. We're actually gonna help. So we had this meeting, we talked about the project design, we set expectations around the different roles of all the different players. We talked about what maintenance could look like after the grant funded the initial treatment, because maintenance is going to be on the landowners. And we also talked a bit about what success looks like. I mean, like Kim said, we don't want to have gaps if we can avoid it. We want to have cohesion. So we need to make sure we understand all the issues that people are facing. We want to plan for long-term sustainability so that this project doesn't just grow over in 5 years or 10 years or whatever. We want to make sure that the capacity is there to keep it in good shape. And we want to make sure that the culture is changing too, that we're making generational change. And let's see, next slide. Yeah. I think so just our long-term engagement options that we've started to talk about are strengthening the neighborhood groups, so helping Firewise Hacienda or Friends of Rio Nido, Friends of Greenwood to become stronger, more robust organizations. We really want this to come from the landowners out. We want them to be coming to us, we want them to be empowered to do what they need to do. We might inspire them to do more Firewise councils, because Firewise councils get special privileges, like they can get reductions on their, in some cases, they get reduced premiums on their home insurance. If they show that they're making an effort being a Firewise council. We want to, again, make sure they're connected with their technical assistants, that could be the county, the RCDs, CAL FIRE, NRCS, and just training them up so that they know the best practices for defensible space and other projects. And then, other things like, do they have a telephone network to stay informed and connected? are they practicing their evacuation routes? And can they work with CAL FIRE in the future to lead prescribed burns across these, this really large project? So then I think we also want to just open it up to you guys. Are there any other ideas you have about long-term engagement options? Not on that list. Maybe we can go back to.
Oh, sure.
Quick,
Yeah.
and just, feel free to shout it out if you have other things that you think we should mention to them when we meet with them in June. Or does this feel like a pretty comprehensive list? Good enough?
Has there been any discussion in these areas for, why does that happen? The barn raising version of prescribed fires is called.
Oh, the Fire Alliance.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sort of idea, but isn't there a name for?
Fire forward.
Prescribed Burn Association, PBA?
Yes,
Yeah.
the PBAs, the prescribed burn associations, have people expressed any interest? I know it's not as ecologically, there's questions.
No, yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know that anyone talked about it exactly, I think people are I don't know if as a group they're open to fire, but I think we can get there, and maybe a couple people are.
Sure.
So we can start with them and
Yeah.
then demonstrate it. Oddfellows is gonna do a prescribed fire on their shade breaker and on the south side of the river,
Yeah.
so they've invited, or they've kind of said, we plan on inviting anyone who wants to come and see it. So they
Nice.
feel what it's like to be on a prescribed fire.
Who's doing it? Like,
CAL FIRE, I think, is doing it, yeah, they hope to do it late May, I think. So yeah, I think, and they'll probably do it, every couple of years, so if people can't see it this year, maybe in future years, but yeah, exposure is really important. That's a good one to add on there. Yeah. Basically, this is what we want to pitch to them and support them in doing, so that they have what they need to keep it going. All right, I think that's the end of this presentation.
Yeah, I think so, yeah, so, I think probably, our take-home message is that I think for a long time through programs like the North Bay Forest Improvement Program, NRCS, EQIP and CFIP, all these programs are really designed to help individual parcel owners. And so what we're advocating here is a collaboration across many landowners. And so it's not as easy. It gets a lot more complicated. And I think one of the original intentions of the Vegetation Management Grant Program was the ways in which we can leverage projects that are existing and try to replicate them as much as possible. So we've talked about regional parks being an excellent example of some of the work that's happening in the area and implementing prescribed fire, doing the shaded fuel breaks on Monterey. Ag and Open Space has projects at Saddle Mountain where we're able to show specific burn units and prescribed burns being led by CAL FIRE. The Sonoma Valley Collaborative, Wildfire Collaborative, is showing different examples. These are added value when we're able to show landowners they can do it too, and gaining that confidence to be able to use burns, whether it's pile burning or broadcast burning. Pepperwood is an excellent learning institution on the ground to be able to see how these practices work. So we're trying to capitalize on these different examples in the field so that more landowners have become more and more familiar, and people aren't complaining about smoke in the air if they know that the value added of a prescribed burn in their particular community is going to reduce the fire risk overall. So those are some of the key take-home messages for this event. So with that, I wondered if there's any comments from the folks on Zoom, if there's or in the room today.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, you mentioned a generational change, and I think Adriana said something about education. Are there other aspects besides education that is, what do you classify as generational change?
So one of the things that I recognized in the first year of all the grants that were awarded, there were a lot of things that were lasting for a year or two. A roadside treatment within 30 feet is going to regrow within 6 months. So how can we look at this in a more long-term basis? And so our sense is that we lean more on shaded fuel breaks, where we establish a restructuring of the forest canopy, the fuel loads between the ground and the canopy, a point on the ridge line that CAL FIRE and other fire professionals know is clear and easy to access, and they can get people out of there, and they can get fire crews in there in the event of a big fire. So shaded fuel breaks are not going to stop a wildfire like Tubbs or Walbridge, but it provides a point among these various areas. These the technical term is the potential operational delineation lines, where these pods have been created by CAL FIRE to establish ways in which they can essentially, where an outbreak starts, they can have create concentric lines of containment, even at the large landscape level. That is what CAL FIRE's objectives are. What we're trying to do is taking the community and trying to protect those from outside, and then help CAL FIRE establish those lines in which to work from. That, I think, is moving towards generational change. If CAL FIRE knows this is a particular strategic area, that's a change in what we've had. Versus if they had run a bulldozer up a very steep slope at risk during a wildfire event, there's a lot more safety issues, a lot more destruction. Pepperwood spent years trying to restore some of the landscape habitat that they were dealing with post-fire. So how do we try to change that dynamic where they're doing prescribed burns? It's healthy for the forest, it's healthy for the grasslands, and it reduces the fuel loads for any fire event that might come from outside.
I think another generational change too is the experience people have in planning these projects and doing them. If they have a really good experience, I feel like that's something that they'll continue to do in the future. And that's their engagement is what we need and what's different from what's happened in the past. So I think if the project that we're doing has a lasting impact on the culture there, like the approach that people want to take, that's another way of making sure that the change lasts.
Any other questions or comments that people want to share online or in the house? Go ahead, Lynn.
So I have to apologize. I was in another meeting until noon, so I missed the presentation.
I can repeat it if you want.
Pardon me?
I can repeat it if you want.
That's okay. I just think one thing that's been helpful to us in the Upper Mark watershed in the last year and a half has been a collaboration with the public lands in our area. So I think 2 years ago, I didn't know all the public lands that were held by different entities. And so now we're only meeting twice a year, but in our watershed, we have ag and open space through the Saddle Mountain Preserve. We have Sonoma Land Trust. Land Paths has increased some acquisitions. We have a piece of the regional park that's in our watershed. And I think a generational change for us might be, instead of always looking inward to how can we get our landowners united, which is important and we're working on that, but is also how can we look outward to be part of that larger community access, public access, and public acquisition as things go forward. And if we can work on projects together, that's great. If we can support each other, that's great. I think we're trying to have a more future vision of how this watershed could look with a public and private collaboration that's more in better communication.
That's great. Thank you, Lynn. Really appreciate those comments. Arthur, you had some comments. You want to share them with the group?
Yeah, I was just starting to write just the Sonoma Valley Regional Park that I mentioned, where there's a lot of burn piles, and a local person in Glen Ellen put out an email to a few people, I think it was yesterday, concerned about the unburned piles, and they were actually creating a hazard by the fuel sitting there. And, I mean, I'm not closely involved, but I reassure that I would guess they were going to be burned before fire season. And I put her in touch with Steve Lee at the Ecology Center, as well as, I think I sent it on to a couple people, but anyway, Steve was able to confirm what I said, that they were going to finish all their burning by April 30th. But the point that I wanted to bring up from that is that the community could be better informed about exactly what's going on. I mean, I'm so happy to see this going on. I'm no complaints from me, but I think if there was some kind of a schedule put up saying, we're doing the burn piles and the work is going to be completed by April 30th, and there was a prominent sign maybe at the entrances of the park, that probably would have allayed this person's fears. So just a suggestion that yeah, I mean, it can be hard to keep up on all this stuff. I understand, try to keep everybody informed, but that would be just one small suggestion.
That's great. I appreciate that comment. I think CAL FIRE, I think also Regional Parks has done a pretty good job on sharing some of their proposed prescribed burns and the dates are happening. Regional Parks has a comment. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, thanks, Arthur. Yeah, we do put up signs and we do post to the websites. This is an interesting instance where our crews have actually burned off all of the burn piles that we have created. It appears that volunteers, unbeknownst to us, have started to pick up some of the lop and scatter that was done and create some burn piles unknown to us. So we're actually going to go out there and see where those piles are, because we thought we had it all taken care of. Folks are kind of taking the initiative, which is great. But yeah, we're going to try to get to the bottom of that, and we will reply to anyone's concerns out there.
For what it's worth, she mentioned that the burn piles had, or some of them at least had paper on the top, which sounded to me like what has been done officially. I have no idea if, some random activist was collecting all the lap and scatter and putting a piece of paper on top just because they thought it looked good or something. But here's another, this is a little bit of a quirky idea, but I was up there a couple months ago, and it was like just after a rain. There was no danger of fire at all, and a number of the burn piles were still had red hot coals, which I thought was cool. And I thought, this would be a great opportunity to invite the public up to roast marshmallows. It could be a public informational event. Just a thought. I almost went home and got some marshmallows myself that day. So
part of the grant program, this is the absolute treat part of my work, is I get to go and do site visits just to make sure the projects are progressing. And so I was out with Pepperwood to experience one of their prescribed burns in collaboration with CAL FIRE, and then at the following weekend was with Fire Forward, and to see how the different scales and projects were done. And it was really inspiring. I shared this with the board as I was out there with Marshall as he was preparing his crews and giving them the prescription for the day, how everything was planned out. And he was really such an advocate for the use of these tools on the ground. And he says, this is the future of fire management now. You guys are the tools that we need on the ground. We are no longer thinking of fire season being just a few months of the year, but in fact, we're here 24/7 just about. So, but one of the things as I was on the ground with these folks, Michael was his phone was blowing up, because of the different neighbors who he has good relationships with were complaining about the smoke. And so it's just kind of like this cat and mouse and kind of like trying to provide that education while conducting something that's going to last for a matter of hours versus the impacts of the smoke of a wildfire is a completely different thing. So I think there's a fair amount of PTSD within the county on anytime you smell or see smoke, but I think we have to get over that, and we as public agencies probably need to do a better job of reaching out and getting people on the ground to see how this is occurring. I was very pleased with the results of both of those burns. So there was a question or comment by Eric. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about, there's a lot of offerings from like Pepperwood and these places, but I think it's hard to get certain subset of people to the actual locations. But I'm just thinking, I know we have some funding in the Resilient Landscapes Coalition to do like site visits, but it would be awesome if we could maybe do like open to the public site visits that are coordinated through programs like Mark West Watershed, and then you follow up with doing the treatment on the ground, and during this time you can talk about fire, just because I think a lot of people think, okay, prescribed fire, like you just get in and you do it and that's the only thing, but surrounding before and after, there's also veg management. So I'm just thinking about, okay, if you can get these community groups to have someone offer their private like home, do a walkthrough consultation kind of thing, followed up with a volunteer day. Yeah, that could be another way to keep people engaged in a much more, I think, personal way, because when they look at a Pepperwood, they look at these other places, they're like, oh, that's public land and that's really great, but that's not really for us necessarily.
Okay. Yeah, that's a fair comment for sure.
One,
go ahead.
Sorry, just one little kind of aside, but I just wanted to say that, you know, in the CAL FIRE project, I talked to, you know, several indigenous folks, and one of them looked at the maps of vegetation change and says, well, looking at kind of the current conditions, like, well, that's how the land looks when it's not tended properly. And really the first thought I had going to the regional park when the burn piles were there was like, well, the land actually looks like it's being tended. And that's a shift in my own thinking from, you know, 5-10 years ago. But it was kind of reassuring to think that, well, now the land actually is being tended as opposed to being just left to do whatever it's going to do and then become a fire hazard.
Yeah, that's a great comment. Thank you. All right, I wanted to shift back to Adriana Stagnaro to share with us some of the lessons learned that they've had developing these stewardship plans throughout the area. So Adriana, do you want to share your screen from your?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. And thanks for the comments in the chat, guys. I appreciate that.
Yeah, surprise, there's another presentation.
Usually Adriana and I are lock and step, and yeah, we're good.
Yeah, we're all right, and I'm Adriana, not Jason Wells, which is what's but it's fine. I made this presentation for Jason, so it really is my work.
That's right, she's the ghostwriter.
But yeah, I wanted to talk about this. This is kind of another approach to landowner engagement for conservation projects. So in Kim's presentation, he talked about, I mean, it's still kind of similar. He had communities coming to him saying, we want to do work and we have some ideas, but we don't know exactly what we want to do. We just want to be safer. We just want our forests to be better. And then, you know, the county and CAL FIRE took that and was like, okay, we're going to reformulate this into a shaded fuel break, right? It was like, this is kind of where we want to start with things. And then it was working in that direction where they were working to get everyone on board with a project that was kind of the county or CAL FIRE's idea, sort of. Is that sort of a fair kind of?
Sure.
Okay. And so now this is an example of a community that's come to us and said, again, we don't know what we want to do, but we want to do something and we need your help to get us there. So what are we going to do? And this has been a long process. And it's a process we're piloting in 2 different communities. One of them is Mark West. And I really can't speak a lot about Mark West because I haven't been involved, but Lynn on the line, you can totally chime in. And then there's also on the west side of the county in Occidental, Camp Meeker, the Bohemian Collaborative, who I've been working with for a while. And I'm going to speak a little bit more from the perspective of that group. That's the group that Fred mentioned earlier. So again, they're a large group of landowners. I think it's something like, I can't remember now.
15,000 acres.
15,000 acres with like, I want to say 25-ish landowners or more. And these are, you know, folks who have individual management plans. They've done projects individually, but they haven't really collaborated on multi-property projects yet, but they kind of know that's the scale that they want to be working at. And they want to have a strategy and they want to be grant fundable. That's kind of the big thing. So, as the RCD, we're like, okay, well, we've written individual management plans, but we haven't so much done. We've done like watershed level planning, but we haven't really done forest management planning at the multi-property level, but we think we can. So let's make a process for it. So this is sort of our proposal to the community about what we can offer and the process for engaging them. We're still in the beginning stage of this, but this is what we've come up with so far. So an RCD stewardship plan, it's really similar to a forest management plan. It has a lot of the same things, but it can go beyond forestry and into wildlife habitat, watershed management, public safety. It can go beyond forestry and into other resources that we want to steward. It's a landscape level, actionable, long range resiliency plan. It documents the shared goals, values, priorities, and objectives of all of the participants. It describes the area's ecological communities, its infrastructure, its fuel loading, any other things that we want to focus on. And this plan serves as the nexus between the community and the RCD, which is the plan author. So this is a process that community comes into with the RCD. And it doesn't just have to be us, anyone can use this template if you'd like to. It's kind of the beginning documentation that they would need for grant funding. It has like a lot of the project descriptions, the level of need, all the kinds of things that a grantor would say, you know, please describe this about your area. Well, we've got it in the stewardship plan. And it has some of the documentation that's needed to start your CEQA permits. And as we're creating this document, it's not just a document, but it's also a process that we're going through. So we're talking with the landowners about how they want to rank and prioritize all the different projects that they might do. It's very similar to CWPP in that way. And then there's just some examples of the different projects that they might do: defensible space, forest management, fuel breaks, wildlife habitat enhancement, etc. So here's a little more detail on what right now is in our template stewardship plan. Kind of already went over these, but it's a lot of what you'd see in a forest management plan. It's pretty much the same. And so we like that too, because we want them to be sort of nested within each other. It's like, we're gonna have people's individual forest management plans, and we're gonna have this overarching stewardship plan. They're gonna be in harmony with each other. What is different though is that it has a section on community subgroups. And that's really necessary because we're looking at a large area, and these communities may actually have differences within them, or even kind of like a strategic approaches within group identities within the larger group. So we want to call those out, and eventually those community subgroups will kind of work as little clubs, sort of like fire safe council pods, if you guys have used those before. So we wanted to acknowledge those groups and give them their own sort of identity, and make sure that they work together in the future. And then really the rest of it is going to look very familiar to you as elements of a forest management plan. So to make this work, what do we need from those landowner groups? Well, we want them to provide us with any existing management plans that they have. I mean, this group that we're working with in Bohemia, I think there's like 18 management plans that are already there. People have been working on this for a while. So we want to make sure we see those plans, and we make sure that what's in there also is reflected in our stewardship plan. If you have a community that doesn't have any management plans, that's okay too. We want the landowner groups to manage the relationship with the RCD's technical team. So that means there's someone there, hopefully like one or few like leader type people who can keep, keep communication going with us and can keep themselves organized so that we have an easy time working with you. And we want to make sure that the landowners can articulate their own goals and objectives. They spend some time thinking about that, even amongst themselves. We can help with that, or they can come to us with that already formed. But that's something that we can't tell you, you have to tell us. So that's what we need. And then on top of that, it would be really great if the landowners would facilitate their own planning meetings. I feel like I'm asking a lot of people by saying this, but it's like, this would actually be very helpful. Otherwise we have Patty, who's, going to be doing a lot of this on behalf of landowner groups who aren't as ready to provide all this, right?
Correct.
So that's another reason. We knew we needed someone to do this. We've either been doing it on our own time and it's been a lot, or we're lucky enough to have landowner groups who can provide it, but we know that not all of them are gonna be as advanced as the Mark West or the Bohemian Collaborative. Some of you landowner groups are gonna be really brand new and you're gonna need Patty's help to do all this. So I'm glad we have her. Yeah, we need someone to herd the cats. We need someone to play, to set up the tasks and follow up. And we also want you guys to study examples of other forestry groups. I always point to Coast Ridge as a shining example of a really long-lasting, organized group that's kind of like the serial stage development of community groups, and there are other groups that are really far along too, but Judy's definitely stands out to me. As well as Lynn's group, absolutely. So that's kind of what we need and what we want. And then this is sort of a funny table, but it shows the different scenarios of how involved RCD can be or not. So I sort of see different stages of work. So you have your planning stage, and once your plan is done, then you're going for funding. And then to get funding, you have to comply with CEQA. And then when you get your implementation project, you're going to need oversight on those projects. So the RCD in scenario A can do all of these things for you if you like. Or in scenario B, we can be really hands-off, allow you guys to do the the planning. You can write your own grants. But if you need CEQA for publicly funded projects, which you probably will, we can enter at that point and assist with the permitting, but we would have to do oversight on the projects that we are the CEQA lead for. So just kind of putting that out there. Or if you have some other CEQA lead, like the county, for example, but you still want a project manager, the RCD can do that. So we can come in later, we can come in at the beginning, or we can come in way later. We could also just be there for planning, and then, you are on your own, you're independent, able to do it. We could come in for planning and for project management, but we don't have to write the grants and we don't have to be the CEQA lead. But the thing we can't do, sorry, I'm gonna give you all different options, but the thing we can't do is we can't be your CEQA lead and not manage the projects, because we're obligated to manage any project that we're a CEQA lead on. So just a quick rundown. For the Bohemian Collaborative Stewardship Plan, we came up with this arrangement where the Bohemian Collaborative is the lead on community engagement. They're there, they want to do that. They have the capacity and they're doing an amazing job. They do want the RCD to write the plan. So we're doing the writing, the mapping, we're incorporating any feedback from landowners. We'll do all that. The Bohemian Collaborative would like to write their own grants though. That's totally cool and awesome that they can do it. We just the RCD needs to approve of any proposals that includes us in it. That's all that we would need to do. And then we also will be the CEQA lead on CEQA. So we're looking forward to doing that. And then we'll also be the project manager for any of the projects that are publicly funded that we're the CEQA lead on. There probably will be some projects that are just done kind of internally and that's great too. Yeah.
I'm not trying to call you out. Do you imagine community engagement and planning happen at the same time? Is that why they're both step one, or was that just a number?
That was just a number thing.
Okay.
Sorry, I added it at the last minute,
No.
so it should be.
I'm really not.
But actually, they are happening at the same time, so it's kind of like 1A, 1B.
Right,
maybe?
yeah. I mean, it seemed totally probable.
Nice comeback.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely happening at the same time. Anyway, but I want to really give props to the Bohemian Collaborative. This is an image of one of their meetings that they had at Occidental Arts and Ecology Center. They packed the house, they brought CAL FIRE, they brought the RCD, they had, I think UC was here. Fred, were you at this meeting?
No.
No? Okay, this was back in January.
Sonoma.
Permit Sonoma. Oh yeah, Kim, and Kim, is that you? All right, I mean, open space is there too. So they totally packed the house. They had all the people there that they wanted to pick their brains, and they wanted to talk about the land. What was going on? What's their fire risk? Let's get thinking at the landscape level beyond the individual properties and out to the larger landscape. So they've been working on this for really, actually, this process started years ago and has been COVID really, slowed things down, but they've really ramped back up post-COVID and they're just very passionate about making this happen. And their goal, their eyes are set on the goal of finishing the stewardship plan and getting to grants. So we plan on having the plan done around fall, and hopefully in time to apply to the CAL FIRE Forest Health Program with the top project ideas that are generated through this process. Here's one more. This was, so the last one I was at OAC, this meeting was just this past Sunday at Green Valley Farm and Mill. This picture is like a third of the audience, I want to say. So I just couldn't take a picture that was quality, that was big enough, but there's more people over on the right side. And yeah, I love that they're having these meetings at properties within the collaborative. They're going to the, they're having meetings within their group, and it's been really inspiring. So, yeah, like I said, we're just kind of at the beginning of this process, but we're excited to have a process sort of outlined in which we can work with landowners and get them to produce projects that are genuinely their own and genuinely quality enough to apply for grants. Because the other thing we see over and over again, Kim backed me up on this, you have people applying for grants who don't really have a good project idea. And it's the planning step that makes a huge difference. It makes it easier for funders to say yes and for project partners to say yes.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
So we're hoping this is a good experience for everyone.
Do you guys make those maps?
No, actually, so Ivan O'Neill is a member of this group, and his WUI Inc. Made these maps.
Aaron.
And Aaron made them, yeah, Aaron Butcher. But anyway, I think that's the end, and
I'd also add, they're based on local, we incorporated a lot of the local fire groups that were organized essentially during the 2017 fires and after, and COVID. So that we all became little cocktail groups trying to figure out how to get out in case of a fire. So there's a bunch of those that are represented.
So Fred, because you're part of this group, can you say a little bit about like how you became such a cohesive group?
I do no.
Cocktails.
No, Amy Bellhartz is, she is really good at convincing people they want to show up, and really good at convincing the RCD there's something called a stewardship plan. And you guys seem to have gone with it. So, again, it's the power of the lead individual in the community who, with help, really pushes the thing forward. I don't think we're perfect by any means, but I think we're gonna get some projects done. And I think we go with, I keep telling people that, go with the pods first, the big pods, go with CAL FIRE, and then give us your particulars later, and the last 20% will go there.
Yeah, right.
So.
Okay.
Lynn, do you want to say anything about what it's been like for your neighborhood working on the stewardship plan over there?
So our project up here started with a CAL FIRE planning grant. Actually, it started with doing an application for a CAL FIRE grant that we didn't get, that was not accepted. And so that told us we needed to go back to the drawing board and do our planning stage more carefully before implementation. And then a number of it really kind of follows the outline that you've already talked about, Adriana, of community meetings, bringing landowners together. I think for the Fire Safe Council, I think what we're capable of doing are the things that you listed. We have a fairly good network of contacting landowners in the area, and that takes a long time to build up. And most newer groups that I see are struggling to figure out, how do we get email addresses or telephone numbers or even mailing addresses? So getting that initial contact list is a big job. I think what we did was host, and I think this was just mentioned too, some meetings are really working meetings. They're like, let's get together, let's get the maps on the table, let's talk about fire science. But other meetings where it's important to reinforce this through social meetings, like the annual summer potluck and the winter social, because there are people that will never come to those work meetings if they don't already have a relationship with someone in that group. So the social meetings, I think, are just as important as the work meetings. I think one of the things that was difficult, a difficult balance to maintain is this a process that is led from the ground up? Are we going to go in and ask for landowners' opinions and ideas and engagement? And we did a lot of that in the beginning, but honestly, what landowners asked for a lot was, would you please give us some top down? Would you please bring in CAL FIRE or experts, Jason, et cetera, who can give us the bigger picture? Because honestly, we don't know what to do. So it was really important to have a balance where landowners felt that they were acknowledged and listened to, but that can be a dead end at some point if they don't have some top-down expertise to help them formulate a better plan, honestly. So that I felt like we lost some time in that struggle where we kept asking people over and over and over again, what do you want? And they honestly didn't know. So even they may have known that they wanted to be involved, but they didn't know what that meant. And at some point, the experts need to step in and say, not just theoretically, these are the kinds of things that you can do, but really, here's a ridge top that makes sense. Here's a line that makes sense. It started to formulate for us when the county was looking at their hazardous fuels reduction program, and they came in with maps that CAL FIRE had developed. And then we went, oh, yeah, maybe it is better one ridge over or to the east or to the west. What else was important? I think those are the things that the kind of the lessons learned from our process. Right now, we have one last community meeting in May, and then Jason Wells will gather everything that he's been working on and work on the Cal VTP at that point, and that process should end in December of this year. And then the goal is to have shovel-ready projects with Cal VTP that now when we go out and look for funding, we're ready to go and we have a more credible plan to present. I think that's what I say.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, you've been successful in getting grants to be able to do some of the roadside treatments, some of the high priority areas that have a positive impact on the landowners who are participating in your process.
I think that's a good point, Kim. I think there's 2 points there. One is that the grants that we've been able to get from the County of Sonoma have really given us credibility. And they've also given us kind of like a living laboratory. Like you can go to Calistoga Road and see what this looks like as a final product. If you were afraid about what a shaded fuel break might look like on your land, you can go look at what was done last year. So that has helped immensely. But I also think it helped immensely that in applying for those county grants, you had criteria set of what you thought were valuable, effective projects that we could follow. So that was a process that was both top down and bottom up because you had criteria set and we figured out how we fit into that and gather the people that were interested in participating. So absolutely, every grant that we get is a benefit to the next one that we apply for.
Unfortunately, you didn't do it in the last 24 hours before the deadline, so the proposals were nice and sharp, so.
Good.
Yeah, no, thanks for saying that, Lynn, though, about the kind of meeting in the middle, because we really want to know what people want to do, but we also acknowledge that sometimes people don't, they just know that there's a need, but they're not sure what, and so it's a collaboration of both perspectives coming together.
And I think landowners know, a lot of landowners know what that is on their own parcel. We probably all have lots of ideas about what needs to be done on our own parcel, but when we're talking about cross parcels, and we're 9,200 acres up here and 500 parcels. Once you start looking beyond your own border, it's really hard to, a lot of us don't have that vision. It's a hard thing to imagine because we haven't worked that way before.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, thank you, Lynn. We really appreciate those comments. I think there's one other item on the agenda. I think it was related to the
it's the calendar I wanted to look over.
Oh, okay.
But
Great, thanks Adriana for that presentation, that was fantastic. Yeah, go ahead.
Do parcels have to be contiguous?
They
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
yeah, just kind of like a cohesive planning area.
Sure,
though. Yeah,
sure.
like fire shed or
Yeah,
watershed.
yeah. Is this a land smart thing, or we haven't done that label on?
No, it doesn't have nice right, maybe it could be, it's an interesting idea.
I mean, it was a little hard for me to see the benefits of that, but I wasn't around in the beginning of it, so I
Yeah.
don't know if it was, yeah.
Okay, thanks Kim for showing us. I wanted to make sure that we had, these upcoming events on our radar. And Rose, I was wondering if you wanted to go through this list and familiarize people with what's coming up next.
Okay, April 18th, this actually just happened at 11 a.m. This is an online webinar from Pepperwood. Maybe it's recorded, that would be cool.
Oh, yeah, it will be recorded.
Okay, great. So you can catch that wildfire fuel mapper webinar, in the recorded version. There's a Sudden Oak Death Blitz at the Grove of Old Trees. That's a land paths event on May 3rd. And then I think we talked about also on May 3rd is the biomass utilization symposium.
Right.
The link to that is in the chat.
Okay.
And then, so that event is at Hopland, and then the next day at Hopland, there's California Tree School. And I'll do a link in the chat to that as well, because there are still spots open for the tree school. Oh,
I think Tori said lots of spots open at
Okay.
tree school, so she would love for people to show up for their first tree school event.
yeah, sounds cool. Oh, and Lynn just said in the chat that there's a grazing workshop hosted by the Upper Mark West Watershed at Pepperwood on May 11th. And registration info will be coming. Cool. On May 16th is our next meeting. And we have a presentation from Resilience Works on Indigenous and immigrant farm workers building a forest resilience workforce in the North Bay project. I'm excited to hear about that. And then, these are our next meetings. And in June, we'll have the 2024 fire season outlook. In July, we'll have a panel on grants and funding opportunities. And in August, we're gonna hear about Sonoma Land Trust woodland bird study, research on nesting season and how it coincides with forest management treatments. Yeah.
And then also there was a meeting on this Saturday at Jenner Headlands on invasive plants. That was mentioned earlier. And then we have the June 9th, what do we call it? The Resilient Forests and Watersheds Workshop for the Guerneville area, lower Russian River.
And when are we gonna have a picnic to discuss picnics?
Right, good.
Let's make sure that gets on the agenda.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. If you and our steering committee too, we could talk about it next week. Yeah, that'd be great.
Rose, you mentioned a calendar earlier that people
Yes.
could submit for events.
Yeah.
We have quite a few that we have planned. I'm not gonna be able to rattle them off right now, but I would love to, maybe the three of us could do the forum, could chat.
Okay, and I just,
Someday, because we're doing outreach in Oddfellows and Summer Home.
Cool.
And
That's great.
someone, Carrie Oder, one of our new fire inspectors, is headed up to like the Wohler Bridge area. And I don't know what y'all's footprint is. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
The entire county for this calendar, so yeah.
Yeah, awesome, okay.
Yeah, and I just put my email in the chat, email me about upcoming events.
There's a lot coming up.
There's a lot coming up, so, yeah,
The flowers are out and the events are out.
yeah, exactly, right?
I
Great.
know there's a, like Cloverdale Citrus Fair has they're having an emergency preparedness fair.
Oh, I
in
totally
May,
forgot about that, yeah,
and we're headed up there. Yeah, there's things.
that's great, good,
Yeah,
all right.
exciting.
Well, I think that's a wrap, we're a little early, but does anybody else have anything they want to share today? Online or in the room? All right, well, thanks folks, really appreciate your attendance and